I clutched the carefully wrapped gift as we approached my mother's vacation home. The ocean breeze carried the scent of salt and pine through the air as my 6-year-old daughter Lily skipped beside me along the stone pathway. This was supposed to be a simple birthday visit, nothing more. The seaside property looked picturesque against the setting sun, but something felt off about the shadows stretching across the porch. Just as I raised my hand to knock, Lily suddenly froze. Her small fingers gripped my wrist with surprising strength. "Mom, don't go in there," she whispered, her voice trembling. I looked down, startled by the intensity in her eyes. "Why not, sweetheart?" I asked. She just shook her head firmly. "Please, let's go home." The desperation in her voice made my heart race. Trusting her instinct, I left the gift on the porch with a quick note and hurried back to our car. But on the drive home, something happened that I'll never forget. My relationship with my mother Patricia had always been complicated. Ever since my father died when I was 12, she had clung to control as if it were a life raft in turbulent waters. Nothing I did was ever quite good enough, and her criticism had a way of slipping under my skin like splinters, small but endlessly irritating. When she purchased the vacation home in Oceanside 3 months ago, it seemed like an impulsive decision after selling her successful real estate business. The price tag had been eye-watering, but she dismissed my concerns about the expense with a wave of her manicured hand. "You never did understand investments, Wendy," she had said during our last phone call. "This property will double in value within 5 years. Besides, I deserve something nice after working my entire life." It was that dismissive tone that had me dreading her 60th birthday party. But family obligation is a powerful force, so I had spent the morning baking her favorite lemon cake with Lily, wrapping it carefully in a decorative box along with an expensive silk scarf I could barely afford. "Do we have to go, Mommy?" Lily had asked while we were packing up the car. "Grandma always looks at me funny." I sighed, adjusting the rearview mirror. "It's her birthday, sweetie. We should try to be there for her." There had been moments in the past when Lily had shown unusual intuition. Like the time she refused to let our neighbor's dog walker take our terrier Sam for a group walk, only for us to discover later that the woman had lost control of the dogs, resulting in 2 of them running into traffic. Or when she insisted we change hotel rooms during our vacation in Florida last year, and that night a water pipe burst in the ceiling of our original room. Each time, I had rationalized her behavior as coincidence or overactive imagination, but there was something unsettling about how accurate her hunches tended to be. My phone buzzed with a text from my younger sister Amanda, who had arrived at our mother's house yesterday. "Things are weird here. Call me when you can." I tried calling immediately, but it went straight to voicemail. With my husband Jack away on a 3-month engineering contract in Germany, I felt particularly alone in navigating family dynamics. His practical advice and calming presence would have been welcome right about now. "Is Daddy going to call tonight?" Lily asked, as if reading my thoughts. "He promised to try, but remember the time difference makes it tricky," I explained, checking the clock. It would be nearly midnight in Berlin. As I loaded the last bag into our sedan, a sense of unease settled over me. I chalked it up to the usual anxiety I felt before spending time with my mother, but looking back, I should have paid more attention to that feeling. It was trying to tell me something important, just as my daughter would try to tell me later that day. The 3-hour drive to Oceanside began pleasantly enough. Lily sang along to her favorite songs for the first hour, her voice sweet and carefree. But as we got closer to the coast, her mood shifted dramatically. She grew quiet, staring out the window with an intensity that seemed beyond her years. "You okay back there, sweetie?" I asked, glancing at her through the rearview mirror. She nodded without looking at me. "Just thinking." "About what?" A long pause followed before she answered. "About Grandma's new house. It feels sad." I frowned slightly. "How can a house feel sad? You've never even been there." "I just know," she replied with the absolute certainty that only children seem capable of mustering. We stopped at a gas station about 50 miles from Oceanside. While Lily used the bathroom, I chatted with the attendant, an older man with leathery skin and kind eyes. "Heading to Oceanside?" he asked, noting my credit card address. "Yes, visiting my mother. She just bought a place there, actually, on Heron Point." His friendly expression faltered slightly. The old Blackwood property? That place has quite a history. What do you mean? I asked, suddenly interested. He seemed to catch himself, shaking his head. Oh, nothing really worth mentioning. Just old local stories. Beautiful area, though. Your mother got herself a real nice view. Before I could press him for details, Lily emerged from the bathroom, and the man quickly finished our transaction. Back on the road, we stopped for lunch at a small diner. While Lily picked at her grilled cheese sandwich, I noticed several missed calls from a number I recognized as belonging to Harold Finch, my mother's new neighbor. I'd only met him once when helping Mom move some furniture, but he'd seemed friendly enough, if a bit nosy. I stepped outside to return his call, but the connection was terrible. Wendy, is that you? His voice came through, broken and distorted. Yes, Harold. Sorry I missed your calls. Is everything okay? Listen carefully. I don't think you should come to your mother's today. There's something. The call cut off abruptly. My stomach tightened as I tried calling him back, but it went straight to voicemail. I tried Amanda again with the same result, then my mother. All voicemail. When we got back on the road, dark clouds had gathered on the horizon, matching my growing sense of foreboding. Lily had fallen asleep, her face peaceful for the first time in hours. By the time we turned onto the private road leading to my mother's vacation home, a light rain had started to fall. The house came into view, a modern structure of glass and cedar, perched on the edge of a cliff overlooking the Pacific. Despite the gloomy weather, it was undeniably beautiful. What wasn't beautiful was the collection of unfamiliar vehicles parked in the circular driveway: a black Range Rover, a silver Mercedes, and a dark blue Audi with tinted windows. My mother had mentioned nothing about additional guests. As we pulled up behind the Audi, I could hear music drifting from inside the house, but it wasn't the classical pieces my mother preferred. This was something darker, with a heavy bass that seemed to vibrate through the ground. "We're here, Lily," I said softly, turning to wake her. Her eyes snapped open instantly, as if she hadn't been asleep at all. "I don't want to go in," she said flatly. "Sweetheart, we drove all this way. And we brought Grandma's cake." She unbuckled her seatbelt but made no move to get out of the car. "Something's not right, Mommy." I was about to reassure her when I noticed movement in an upstairs window. My mother's boyfriend Thomas was standing there, watching us. We'd only met twice before, and I hadn't formed a strong opinion of him other than thinking he seemed slick for a man in his 60s. But the way he was staring down at us now made my skin crawl. He didn't wave or acknowledge that he'd seen us. He just watched, his expression unreadable behind the rain-streaked glass. "Let's just say a quick hello," I said to Lily, trying to sound more confident than I felt. "We won't stay long if you're uncomfortable." She reluctantly took my hand as we approached the house, the carefully wrapped gift balanced in my other arm. The rain had intensified, falling in cold, heavy drops that soaked through my light jacket. As we reached the front steps, I could see shapes moving behind the frosted glass of the front door. Voices raised in what sounded like argument, though the words were indistinct. Then, suddenly, silence fell inside. Standing on the porch, I raised my hand to knock when I felt Lily stiffen beside me. Her fingers dug into my palm with surprising force, and when I looked down, her face had gone completely pale. "Mom, don't go in there," she whispered, her voice barely audible above the rain pattering on the porch roof. Her eyes, wide with genuine fear, never left the door. "What's wrong?" I asked, kneeling down to her level. She shook her head frantically. "Please, let's go home." Her voice cracked with desperation. "Lily, we came all this way. Can you tell me why you're scared?" She leaned in close to my ear. "There are bad people inside. They want to hurt Grandma." A chill that had nothing to do with the rain ran down my spine. Through the decorative glass panels flanking the door, I could make out several silhouettes moving around the entryway. One of them approached the door, and I instinctively pulled Lily back a step. "Who's there?" called a male voice I didn't recognize. Before I could answer, I heard my mother. "It's probably Wendy and Lily. Let them in." Something in her tone sounded strained, almost mechanical. not at all like her usual commanding presence. The door began to open, and Lily tugged hard on my hand, pulling me back. In that moment, I had to make a decision that went against every social convention I'd been raised to follow. Trust my 6-year-old daughter's instinct, or honor my obligation to my mother? "We're not staying," I whispered to Lily, and her entire body sagged with relief. I quickly placed the gift box on the small table beside the door and pulled a pen from my purse. On the gift tag, I scribbled, "Happy birthday, Mom. Sorry we couldn't stay. Lily isn't feeling well. Call me later. Love, Wendy and Lily." As we retreated down the steps, the front door swung open. Thomas stood there, his tall frame blocking most of the view inside. "Leaving so soon?" he asked, his tone pleasant enough but his eyes cold. "Patricia will be disappointed." "Lily isn't feeling well," I said, the lie coming easily as I held my daughter close. "Please give my mother our best. We'll try to visit another time." He smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. "Of course. Drive safely." As we hurried back to the car through the intensifying rain, I felt his gaze on our backs like a physical weight. I helped Lily into her seat and buckled her in with trembling hands before sliding behind the wheel. As we pulled away, I glanced in the rearview mirror and saw Thomas still standing on the porch, watching us go. But it was what I glimpsed at the edge of the property that made my blood run cold. Partially hidden among the trees that bordered the driveway stood a figure I recognized immediately, despite the years that had passed. Scott Harmon, my mother's former business partner, the man who had embezzled nearly $2 million from their real estate company 5 years ago. The man who had threatened my mother during his trial, vowing revenge. The man who was supposed to be serving a 12-year sentence in federal prison. Yet there he was, watching our departure with undisguised interest, rainwater streaming down his face. When he realized I had spotted him, he smiled and raised his hand in a mocking wave. I accelerated down the driveway, gravel spraying from beneath our tires. Lily sat quietly in the back seat, her eyes closed, breathing deeply as if in meditation. "You were right," I told her, my voice shaking. "You were absolutely right." She opened her eyes and looked at me in the rearview mirror. "I know, Mommy. The bad man in the trees wants to hurt Grandma, and the man at the door is helping him." I gripped the steering wheel tighter, my mind racing. How had Scott gotten out of prison? What was he doing at my mother's house? And how was Thomas involved? And, most importantly, what kind of danger was my mother in right now? One thing was certain. My daughter's warning had likely saved us from walking into a dangerous situation. But we weren't safe yet, and neither was my family. What had started as a birthday visit had just become something far more sinister, and I needed to figure out what to do next. As we reached the main road, I had to make another critical decision. Drive away to safety with Lily, or find a way to help my mother and sister? The responsible choice seemed obvious, but the thought of abandoning my family to whatever scheme Scott and Thomas were orchestrating made my stomach turn. "Lily," I said carefully, "I need you to tell me everything you felt back there. What made you so scared?" She was quiet for a long moment before answering. "The bad man from the trees has been planning something for a long time, Mommy. He wants to take everything away from Grandma. And there are other bad men in the house, too. They were waiting for us." The precise way she articulated this chilled me to the bone. This wasn't just childhood imagination. There was a clarity to her insight that defied explanation. And based on what I had just seen with my own eyes, she was right. I pulled over at the first turn, out, a small gravel area overlooking the ocean. The rain had begun to ease, but heavy clouds still hung low over the turbulent water. I needed to think clearly, to come up with a plan that wouldn't put either of us in danger. That's when my phone rang. "Amanda?" I answered immediately, recognizing my sister's number. "Wendy, thank God." Her voice was a hoarse whisper. "Where are you?" "About a mile from Mom's house. We just left. What's going on?" Listen to me very carefully. The fear in her voice made my heart pound. "Do not come back here. Take Lily and get somewhere safe." "Amanda, I saw Scott Harmon at the property. What is he doing out of prison? What's happening?" Her sharp intake of breath was audible. "You saw him? Did he see you?" "Yes. Amanda, please tell me what's going on. There was rustling on her end, as if she was moving. I'm hiding in the boathouse down by the water. I managed to sneak out when everyone was distracted by your arrival. Hiding from what? I demanded. It's Thomas. He's been working with Scott this whole time. They've been planning this for months. Thomas isn't who Mom thinks he is. He's got connections, dangerous ones. He introduced himself to Mom right after Scott went to prison. It was all deliberate. My mind reeled at the implications. What do they want? Everything. Her voice broke. They've already gotten Mom to sign over power of attorney to Thomas. Tonight, they're planning to force her to transfer ownership of all her properties and investments. They've been drugging her, Wendy. She's not herself. I tried to stop it when I realized what was happening, but they've been keeping me here against my will since yesterday. I thought of my mother's strained voice behind the door. We need to call the police. No, Amanda's response was immediate. Thomas has someone on the local force, and Scott has brought in some very dangerous people. They're professionals, Wendy. They've done this kind of thing before. What kind of thing? Asset stripping. They target wealthy, vulnerable people, isolate them, and take everything. If they had gotten you and Lily inside, she couldn't finish the sentence. My blood ran cold as I understood what she was implying. They would have used us as leverage against Mom. Yes, your daughter saved you both. I don't know how she knew, but she was right. There was a pause, then Amanda continued with renewed urgency. I think I can make it to town if I follow the beach. There's a path that... She stopped mid-sentence. Amanda? I gripped the phone tighter. Her next words came in a terrified rush. Someone's coming. I have to go. Stay away from here, Wendy. Keep Lily safe. I'll try to reach you when I can. Amanda, wait. But the line went dead. I sat frozen, staring at my phone while Lily watched me silently from the back seat. After a moment, she unbuckled herself and climbed into the front passenger seat. Aunt Amanda is in trouble, she said. It wasn't a question. Yes, sweetheart, she is. I tried to keep my voice steady. And so is Grandma. I need to think about what to do next. The men will find Aunt Amanda, Lily said with quiet certainty. I turned to her, startled. What makes you say that? She just looked at me, with those solemn eyes that suddenly seemed decades older than her 6 years. I just know. My phone chirped with a text message. Unknown number. When I opened it, my breath caught in my throat. It was a photo of Amanda, her face tear, streaked, being forced into the back of the dark blue Audi I'd seen parked at my mother's house. A second text followed. Your sister should have stayed put. Now we need to have a conversation. Bring the girl back to the house, or things will get much worse. I deleted the messages immediately, not wanting Lily to see them. My hands were shaking so badly I nearly dropped the phone. We need to go somewhere safe and figure this out, I told her. Somewhere no one would think to look for us. I put the car in gear and headed toward town, away from my mother's house. My mind was racing through options. A hotel would require ID. Friends in the area? None that I could think of. Police? If Amanda was right about Thomas having someone on the local force, that could be dangerous. Then I remembered Harold Finch, my mother's neighbor who had tried to warn me earlier. His call had been cut off, but he clearly knew something was wrong. I needed more information before I could formulate a plan, and he might be my best option. 15 minutes later, we pulled into the parking lot of a small diner called the Blue Anchor, on the outskirts of Oceanside. It was nearly empty, just a couple of locals at the counter, and an elderly man in a booth by the window. Hungry, sweetie? I asked Lily, who nodded despite the circumstances. Let's get something to eat while I make a few calls. As we settled into a booth far from the other patrons, a waitress brought us menus and water. I ordered a grilled cheese sandwich for Lily and coffee for myself, not feeling capable of eating anything. While Lily colored on the children's menu, I tried calling Harold again. This time, he answered. Wendy? Where are you? He sounded agitated. In town. Harold, what's going on at my mother's house? I tried to visit, but... Thank God you didn't go inside, he interrupted. I've been watching that place since your mother moved in, and something isn't right. Strange people coming and going at all hours. Your mother hasn't been seen outside in weeks. Do you know who Thomas really is? I asked. Harold lowered his voice. I did some digging after meeting him. His real name is Thomas Blackwood. He's been involved in multiple fraud investigations but never convicted. He specializes in targeting wealthy retirees. The same last name as the property. The old Blackwood property, the gas station attendant had called it. This couldn't be coincidence. Does that property have some connection to him? I asked. It belonged to his family decades ago, before they lost it to foreclosure. I think he's been plotting to get it back for years. The pieces were starting to come together. And Scott Harmon? He's supposed to be in prison. Released 3 months ago on a technicality. His conviction was overturned due to mishandled evidence. Harold paused. How do you know about him? I saw him at the house today. I hesitated, then added, They've taken my sister, Harold. And my mother is still in there. Jesus. He was quiet for a moment. You need to be careful. These are dangerous people. I need help, I admitted. I don't know what to do. Where are you right now? Exactly. I hesitated, not entirely sure I could trust him. As if sensing my reluctance, he added, I'm a retired detective, Wendy. Boston PD, 30 years. Your mother mentioned it when we first met. I can help you, but I need to know where you are. The Blue Anchor Diner on Highway 1. Stay there. I'm 15 minutes away. After hanging up, I noticed Lily watching me with those unnervingly perceptive eyes. Is the man coming to help us? She asked. I hope so, sweetheart. I reached across the table and squeezed her hand. How are you doing? Are you scared? She considered the question seriously. A little, but not as scared as before. The bad feeling is still there, but it's not as strong now that we're away from the house. Lily, how do you know these things? About the bad men, about Aunt Amanda. She shrugged, taking a bite of her grilled cheese. I just see pictures in my head sometimes, and I get feelings. Dad says I have good intuition. You've talked to Dad about this? She nodded. He believes me. He says his grandmother was the same way. I felt a stab of guilt that my husband had these conversations with our daughter while I had dismissed her feelings as childish imagination. If I had listened sooner, perhaps we wouldn't be in this situation. I believe you too, I told her. And I'm sorry I didn't listen better before. She smiled. The first real smile I'd seen from her all day. It's okay, Mommy. You're listening now. The bell over the diner door jingled, and an older man with silver hair and watchful eyes entered. He scanned the room briefly before his gaze landed on us. Harold Finch was exactly as I remembered him, though the concern etched on his weathered face was new. He slid into the booth beside Lily, who surprisingly didn't shy away from him. You must be Lily, he said gently. Your mom tells me you're very perceptive. Lily studied him for a moment before nodding. You want to help us? That's right. He turned to me. We don't have much time. Thomas has connections with some very unsavory characters. If they've taken your sister, the situation is escalating faster than I anticipated. What do you know about him? I asked. Thomas Blackwood has been on law enforcement radar for years. He's suspected in at least 3 other cases of elder fraud, but he's careful. Leaves no evidence. Works with different partners each time. Harold's expression darkened. His association with Scott Harmon is new, but it makes sense. Scott knows your mother's finances intimately from their business partnership, and he has motive for revenge. And they're using my mother's vacation home because of its connection to Thomas's family? Harold nodded. The symmetry appeals to him, taking back what he considers rightfully his, while simultaneously destroying someone else's life. It's how these sociopaths think. Just then, my phone vibrated with another text. I hesitated before checking it, afraid of what I might see. Another photo, this one showing Amanda sitting in what looked like a storage room, a darkening bruise on her cheek. The message read, Time's running out. 1 hour. I showed the phone to Harold, whose jaw tightened. Do you recognize where that is? He asked. I studied the image more carefully. It looks like... Wait, that's the boathouse at my mother's property. See the distinctive paneling? It's custom redwood. Harold took the phone, zooming in on details I hadn't noticed. Good eye. This gives us something to work with. He handed the phone back. Wendy, I need to know if you're willing to take risks to save your family. I glanced at Lily, who was finishing her sandwich, seemingly oblivious to our conversation, but undoubtedly absorbing every word. I can't put my daughter in danger, I said firmly. Of course not. But there are things we can do while keeping her safe. Harold leaned forward. I have contacts in the state police who won't be compromised by Thomas's local connections. But they'll need evidence to move quickly, and that's where you come in. What are you suggesting? I think it's time we turn the tables on Thomas Blackwood, Harold said, a determined glint in his eye. And I believe you're just the person to help me do it. As he outlined his plan, I felt a strange calm settle over me. The path forward was dangerous, but for the first time since seeing Scott Harmon in those trees, I felt a glimmer of hope. My daughter had saved us from walking into a trap. Now it was my turn to save the rest of our family. First, we need to get Lily somewhere safe, I insisted, watching my daughter color quietly beside Harold. He nodded. My sister runs a bed and breakfast about 20 minutes from here. No one would think to look for her there, and Martha is extremely discreet. I'm not leaving Lily with strangers. You'd be with her until we implement the plan, Harold assured me. But when the time comes, you can't bring her with you. It's too dangerous. The reality of what we were considering hit me full force. What exactly are you proposing I do? Harold's voice dropped to ensure we wouldn't be overheard. Thomas and his associates are expecting you to bring Lily back to the house. That's not happening. But they don't know that I'm involved, or that you're aware of the full situation. We can use that to our advantage. He pulled out his phone and showed me a contact. This is Grace Turner. We worked together for 15 years in Boston before she moved here. She's now a detective with the state police, stationed in the neighboring county. Thomas wouldn't know about her, and she has no connection to the local force. Can we trust her? I asked. With your life, Harold said firmly. I already called her while driving here. She's assembling a team, but they need probable cause for a raid. That's where you come in. You want me to get evidence, I realized. Exactly. Your mother's property has a hidden entrance that leads directly to her home office, doesn't it? You mentioned it when you were helping her move in. I was surprised he remembered. Yes, it's a remnant from when the house was remodeled. The previous owners added a separate entrance to what was once a home business space. Mom was planning to use it as her private retreat. Perfect. Thomas and his people will be watching the main entrances, but they might not know about this access point. You could get in, gather evidence of what they're planning, and get out without being detected. And if I am detected? I couldn't keep the fear from my voice. Grace's team will be positioned nearby, ready to move in at the first sign of trouble, but they can't act without evidence of a crime. I glanced at Lily, who had stopped coloring and was watching us intently. What do you think, sweetheart? The nice man's plan will work, she said with surprising confidence. But you have to be very careful, Mommy. The bad men are angry now. Harold raised an eyebrow, clearly impressed by her insight. Your daughter is quite remarkable. I'm beginning to understand that, I admitted. While Lily finished her milk, Harold and I hammered out the details. I would call my former college roommate, who now lived about an hour away, and ask if Lily could stay with her family for the night. This would be our cover story, if Thomas's associates were somehow monitoring my phone. In reality, Lily would stay at Martha's bed and breakfast under Harold's protection while I worked with Grace to gather evidence. Once we have what we need, Harold explained, Grace's team can move in. Time is critical, though. Based on what your sister told you, they're planning to force your mother to sign over her assets tonight. And Amanda? She's being held in the boathouse. Grace will position an officer near the water specifically to secure that building first. Your sister's safety is a priority. As we prepared to leave, I received another text. 30 minutes. Then we start sending your sister back in pieces. I showed Harold, my hands shaking. They're bluffing, he said firmly. They need Amanda alive as leverage. But we do need to move quickly. We paid the bill and left the diner, following Harold in his truck to a charming Victorian house set back from the road among towering cypress trees. Martha Finch was a no-nonsense woman in her 60s who took one look at Lily and immediately offered her freshly baked cookies and a secure room upstairs. While Lily got settled, I made the fake call to my friend, speaking loudly about dropping Lily off for a sleepover. Then I called my real contact, Grace Turner, who proved to be as competent and reassuring as Harold had promised. "I have 6 officers positioned around the perimeter of your mother's property," she told me. "They're in plain clothes, disguised as beachgoers and hikers. I've also got a marine unit standing by offshore. But Harold's right, we need concrete evidence before we can move in." "I understand," I said, trying to sound braver than I felt. "We've run background checks on Thomas Blackwood and his known associates," Grace continued. "These are dangerous individuals, Wendy. If at any point you feel you're in imminent danger, use the panic button on the phone we're providing. Don't try to be a hero." After finalizing the details, I went upstairs to say goodbye to Lily. She was sitting on a window seat in a cozy bedroom, watching birds in the garden below. "I have to go help Grandma and Aunt Amanda now," I told her, sitting beside her. "You'll stay here with Martha. She'll take good care of you." Lily turned those old soul eyes on me. "I know you have to go, Mommy, but promise you'll be careful. The bad men are watching the water." I felt a chill. "The water? You mean the ocean by Grandma's house?" She nodded solemnly. "They think Aunt Amanda might try to escape that way. There's a man with a gun hiding near the big rocks." I immediately texted this information to Grace, who responded that she'd alert her Marine unit. "How do you know these things, Lily?" I asked, genuinely curious now rather than skeptical. She shrugged. "The pictures just come into my head. Dad says his grandmother could do it too. She called it the knowing." I made a mental note to have a serious conversation with Jack about this family trait he'd neglected to mention. But for now, I was grateful for my daughter's gift. "I love you more than anything in this world," I told her, pulling her into a tight hug. "And I promise, I'll be back soon." "I know you will," she said with absolute certainty. "The pictures show you coming back." With that reassurance bolstering my courage, I left Lily in Martha's capable hands and joined Harold and Grace in preparing for what would undoubtedly be the most dangerous thing I'd ever done. An hour later, dressed in dark clothing and wearing a communication device disguised as a simple earpiece, I approached my mother's property from the public beach that bordered it to the north. The rain had stopped, but heavy clouds still obscured the moon, providing useful cover as I made my way along the shoreline. Grace's voice came through the earpiece. "We've identified 7 individuals on the property besides your mother and sister. 4 are inside the main house, 1 is patrolling the grounds, 1 is stationed at the boathouse, and 1 is exactly where your daughter said, on the rocks overlooking the water. All appear to be armed." I swallowed hard, reality setting in. "How do they have so many people?" "Thomas Blackwood has connections to organized crime on the East Coast," Grace explained. "These are likely hired professionals." I reached the point where I needed to leave the beach and climb the steep path that would lead to the hidden entrance. "I'm approaching the access point now," I whispered. "Be careful," Grace cautioned. "There's a guard about 30 yards to your right, near the garden shed." I froze, pressing myself against the rocky cliff face. Through the darkness, I could make out the silhouette of a man smoking a cigarette, his attention focused on the main driveway. "Wait for him to move," Grace advised. "He appears to be completing a patrol circuit." After what felt like an eternity, the guard crushed his cigarette and continued along the perimeter, moving away from my position. I seized the opportunity, scrambling up the narrow path that was nearly invisible, unless you knew exactly where to look. The hidden entrance was concealed behind a false rock face, part of the extensive landscaping that blended the modern house into its natural surroundings. My fingers found the hidden latch, and the panel swung inward silently. "I'm in," I whispered, stepping into the narrow passage that led to my mother's private office. The passage was dark and musty, clearly unused since she had purchased the property. I used the small flashlight Grace had provided, keeping the beam pointed downward to avoid any light being visible from outside. At the end of the passage was another door, this one leading directly into what my mother had planned to use as her personal office. I pressed my ear against it, listening for any sound from within. Hearing nothing, I carefully turned the handle. The office was dark and appeared empty. Through the interior door that connected to the rest of the house, I could hear voices arguing in what sounded like the main living room. I recognized Thomas's smooth, cultured tones. "The paperwork needs to be completed tonight, Patricia. Your signature on these final documents, and everything will be transferred cleanly." My mother's voice was slurred, confirming Amanda's claim that they had been drugging her. "I told you, I want to speak to my daughters first. Where's Amanda?" "Amanda stepped out for some air," Thomas replied smoothly. "And Wendy should be arriving shortly with your granddaughter. Now, let's focus on these documents." A third voice, one I recognized as Scott Harmon's, cut in. "Enough delays, Thomas. Get her to sign, or we move to Plan B." My blood ran cold at the implied threat. I needed to find evidence quickly. I began searching the office, careful not to disturb anything noticeably. On the desk was a laptop, likely containing the documents they wanted my mother to sign. It was password protected, but I knew my mother well enough to guess her standard password. After 2 attempts, I was in. What I found confirmed our worst fears. Documents transferring ownership of not just the vacation home, but all of my mother's properties and investments to a series of shell companies controlled by Thomas. There were also incriminating emails between Thomas and Scott, dating back over 2 years, detailing their plan to target my mother for what they called asset acquisition. Most disturbing was a folder labeled Previous Operations, containing detailed information about 3 other wealthy individuals who had been similarly victimized. In each case, the victim had either died under suspicious circumstances or been committed to psychiatric care after appearing to suffer a mental breakdown. I quickly connected the special USB drive Grace had provided, which would transmit the files directly to her team. "I've found evidence," I whispered into my communicator. "Multiple documented cases of fraud, plus explicit plans for my mother." "Excellent work," Grace responded. "The files are coming through now. Keep transmitting while I review." As the files transferred, I continued searching the office. In the bottom drawer of the desk, I found a small voice recorder. Curious, I pressed play, keeping the volume low. My mother's voice emerged, sounding clear and lucid, unlike how I had just heard her in the other room. "If anything happens to me, this is Patricia Caldwell. Recording on March 15th. I believe Thomas Blackwood is not who he claims to be. He's been pressuring me to change my will and grant him power of attorney. I've discovered medication in my tea that I believe he's been using to make me compliant. I'm leaving this recording in my secure office and have sent copies of my suspicions to my attorney. If you're hearing this, please contact my daughters, Wendy and Amanda." I felt a surge of pride at my mother's foresight, even as worry for her current situation intensified. This recording was exactly what we needed. "Grace, I found a recording of my mother, explicitly naming Thomas and detailing his attempts to drug her. This is clear evidence." "Perfect," Grace replied. "We've reviewed the other files. Combined with this recording, we have more than enough to move in. Stand by for..." A noise from the main house interrupted her. The voices had grown louder, more agitated. "I'm not signing anything else," my mother's voice, suddenly stronger. "Where is Amanda? What have you done with her?" Then Scott's voice, all pretense gone. "Restrain her. We don't have time for this." "Get ready to move," Grace instructed me. "We're mobilizing now." I was preparing to retreat through the hidden passage when disaster struck. The office door burst open, and one of Thomas's associates entered, flipping on the light. For a moment, we both froze in shock, staring at each other across the desk. He was a tall, muscular man with a scar across one cheek, and he recovered from his surprise faster than I did. "We have an intruder!" he shouted, reaching inside his jacket. I reacted instinctively, grabbing the heavy crystal paperweight from the desk and hurling it at him with all my strength. It struck him in the forehead, and he staggered backward, momentarily stunned. I seized the opportunity, bolting for the hidden passage. But he recovered quickly, lunging forward and catching my ankle. I crashed to the floor, the impact knocking the wind from my lungs. "Grace, I've been compromised!" I gasped into the communicator. "Hold on, Wendy. We're coming in now." As the man dragged me backward by my ankle, I kicked frantically with my free foot, connecting with his nose. Blood spurted, and his grip loosened enough for me to scramble away. I made it to the hidden door and slammed it behind me, but there was no lock. I ran down the dark passage, hearing him crashing against the door behind me. Just as I reached the exit to the outside, I heard Grace's voice through the earpiece. "Police! Everyone on the ground now!" Followed by the sound of multiple voices shouting commands and doors being forced open. I emerged onto the rocky path, just as floodlights illuminated the entire property. Police officers in tactical gear were converging on the house from all directions. Down by the boathouse, I could see officers securing the area where Amanda was being held. Relief flooded through me, only to be replaced by fresh fear as I spotted Thomas running from the house toward a vehicle parked near the cliff edge. He had my mother with him, his arm around her throat. "Grace!" I shouted into the communicator. "Thomas has my mother! Near the north cliff!" I began running in their direction, driven by desperate determination to protect my family. As I drew closer, I could see the absolute fury on Thomas's face as his carefully constructed plan collapsed around him. "Stay back!" he shouted, tightening his grip on my mother, who looked frighteningly pale and disoriented. "Let her go, Thomas," I called, trying to keep my voice steady. "It's over. The police have everything they need to put you away for the rest of your life." His face contorted with rage. "I still have leverage," he snarled, pulling my mother closer to the cliff edge. One step closer, and we both go over. Time seemed to slow as I faced the man threatening my mother's life. In that moment, I remembered something my father had told me long ago. When someone is cornered and desperate, they're at their most dangerous, but also at their most vulnerable to unexpected actions. Taking a deep breath, I made a decision that went against all logic but felt instinctively right. "I know about the Blackwood estate," I said calmly. "I know this property was once your family's home." Thomas faltered, clearly surprised by this change in tactic. "My mother didn't know when she bought it," I continued, taking a small step forward. "But I understand why this place matters to you. Losing your family home must have been devastating." Confusion flickered across his face, his grip on my mother loosening slightly. "What do you know about it?" "I know that your father lost it to foreclosure 30 years ago. I know you've been planning to reclaim it." Another careful step forward. "But this isn't the way, Thomas. My mother is innocent in all this." For a moment, I thought I'd gotten through to him. His expression softened infinitesimally, and he glanced down at my mother with something like regret. Then his face hardened again. "Nice try, but sentiment won't save either of you." As he began backing up toward the cliff edge again, a voice rang out from behind me. "Thomas Blackwood! Police! Release the hostage and get on the ground." I turned to see Grace approaching with her weapon drawn, flanked by 2 officers. Thomas sneered. "Not happening. Back off, or she goes over the edge." What happened next occurred so quickly that it seemed like a blur. My mother, who had appeared nearly unconscious, suddenly drove her elbow hard into Thomas's stomach. He doubled over, his grip loosening enough for her to wrench free and stumble forward. As Thomas straightened, rage contorting his features, Grace fired. The shot caught him in the shoulder, spinning him backward. He teetered at the cliff edge for one heart, stopping moment before crashing to the ground, clutching his wound and howling in pain. Officers swarmed forward, securing Thomas as I rushed to my mother, catching her as her knees buckled. "Wendy?" she mumbled, her eyes struggling to focus. "What's happening? Where's Amanda?" "She's safe, Mom," I assured her, holding her tightly as medical personnel approached. Everyone's safe now. Over my mother's shoulder, I could see more officers leading Scott Harmon and the other men from the house in handcuffs. Near the boathouse, Amanda was wrapped in a blanket, talking to a female officer. As the paramedics took over caring for my mother, Grace approached me. "Your sister is shaken but unharmed," she reported. "Your mother will need medical attention to clear the drugs from her system, but the doctors say she'll make a full recovery." "Thank you," I said, the words wholly inadequate for what she and Harold had done. "I don't know how to repay you." Grace smiled. "Harold speaks very highly of you. Said you had more courage than most trained officers he's worked with." I think he was right. As the adrenaline began to fade, exhaustion hit me like a physical blow. I need to get back to my daughter. Of course, I'll have an officer drive you. Grace placed a hand on my shoulder. You did good work tonight, Wendy. Your family is lucky to have you. I thought of Lily, with her remarkable intuition that had kept us from walking into a trap. I think I'm the lucky one, I replied. As I prepared to leave the scene of what had nearly been an unimaginable tragedy, I glanced back at the house my mother had purchased with such optimism just 3 months ago. What Thomas and Scott had intended as the setting for their revenge had instead become the stage for their downfall. And it had all started with my 6-year-old daughter refusing to enter that house. Don't go in there, she had warned, and in listening to her, I had set in motion the chain of events that saved our entire family. The police cruiser was waiting to take me back to Lily, and as I slid into the back seat, I felt something I hadn't experienced in hours. Hope. We had survived this ordeal, and somehow, I knew we would emerge stronger for it. Dawn was breaking as the police cruiser pulled up to Martha Finch's bed and breakfast. The officer, a kind woman named Diaz, had kept me updated throughout the journey. My mother was stable at Oceanside Memorial Hospital. Amanda was giving her statement at the station, and all 9 suspects, including Thomas and Scott, were in custody. Detective Turner wanted me to tell you that the evidence you gathered was exceptional, Officer Diaz said as we arrived. Thomas Blackwood's laptop contained records of 3 previous victims. You've helped solve cases we didn't even know were connected. I nodded, too exhausted for the information to fully register. All I wanted was to hold my daughter and then sleep for about 3 days. Martha opened the door before I could knock, her expression shifting from concern to relief as she saw me. Thank God you're all right. Harold called and told me what happened, said it was quite the operation. Is Lily still sleeping? I asked, stepping inside. Martha chuckled. Sleeping? That child's been up since 5, telling me exactly when you'd arrive and that you'd be very tired but okay. She's in the kitchen having pancakes. I found Lily perched at the breakfast nook, calmly eating blueberry pancakes as if the past 24 hours had been perfectly ordinary. When she saw me, her face lit up with a smile that melted away every ounce of tension I'd been carrying. Mommy! She jumped down and ran to me, wrapping her arms around my waist. I told Miss Martha you'd be here at 6:27, and it's 6:26. I checked my watch. Sure enough, it was 6:26 a.m. I knelt down and gathered her into a proper hug, breathing in the comforting scent of her shampoo. You were right, as usual. Have you been a good guest? The best, Martha confirmed, setting a cup of coffee in front of me. She even helped me prepare the batter for these pancakes. Said you'd be hungry when you got here. I was suddenly aware of the hollow feeling in my stomach. Starving, actually. As I ate the best pancakes I'd ever tasted, I called Jack in Germany, waking him in the middle of the night to update him on our situation. He was appropriately shocked and concerned, immediately offering to fly home early. No need, I assured him. The danger has passed, and you only have 2 weeks left on your contract. We'll be fine until you get back. Are you sure? His voice was heavy with worry. I could be on a plane in 3 hours. I'm sure, I said, surprising myself with how much I meant it. Lily and I are going to stay with my friend Tess for a couple of days while everything gets sorted out. Then we'll probably help Mom find a new place closer to us. After promising to call with updates, I ended the call and focused on planning our next steps. Martha graciously offered us her guest room for a nap before we continued on our journey. Both Lily and I accepted gratefully, curling up together on the comfortable queen bed and falling into a deep, dreamless sleep. We woke in the early afternoon to the sound of Harold's truck in the driveway. He had stopped by the hospital and brought news that my mother was recovering well, the drugs nearly out of her system. Amanda had completed her statement and was resting at a hotel under police protection until all the suspects were processed. I've spoken to Grace, Harold told me, as we sat in Martha's sunny garden. Lily was helping Martha deadhead roses nearby, seemingly fascinated by the process. Thomas is facing multiple charges including kidnapping, assault, fraud, and conspiracy. Scott's looking at similar charges, plus violation of his parole. The others are already cooperating, hoping for reduced sentences. None of them will see the outside of a prison for a very long time. What about Mom's assets? The documents she signed? All void, Harold assured me. They were obtained under duress, and while she was being drugged. Her attorney has already been notified and is handling the legalities. Everything will be restored to her. Relief flooded through me. I can't thank you enough, Harold. Without your help. He waved away my gratitude. Anyone would have done the same. No, I said firmly. Most people would have called the local police and washed their hands of the situation. You put yourself at risk for a family you barely know. Harold's weathered face softened as he glanced at Lily. When you get to my age, you learn to recognize what's important. Family. Doing the right thing. Those are constants. He cleared his throat. Besides, your daughter is something special. I've only met one other person in my life with her kind of intuition. Your wife? I guessed. He nodded, a shadow of old grief passing over his features. Catherine knew things. Things she couldn't possibly have known through ordinary means. Saved my life more than once during my time on the force. He smiled faintly. Your Lily reminds me of her. After thanking Martha profusely for her hospitality, Lily and I set out for Tess's house in Riverside, about an hour inland. The drive gave me time to process everything that had happened and to appreciate just how fortunate we had been. Lily, I said, glancing at her in the rearview mirror. I want you to know how proud I am of you. You were so brave yesterday, and you were right about everything. She looked up from her book. Are you going to listen to me more now? Absolutely, I promised. And when we get home, I want you and Dad to tell me more about this family gift of yours. Daddy calls it the knowing, she said matter-of-factly. His grandmother had it strongest, but sometimes his mom got feelings too. He said it skips around in the family tree. And he never thought to mention this to me? I couldn't keep the hint of exasperation from my voice. Lily shrugged. He said you're a see it to believe it person. You needed to see it work first. I laughed despite myself. Jack had my number there. We stayed with Tess and her family for 3 days while the legal situation stabilized. My mother recovered quickly once the drugs cleared her system, though she was deeply shaken by the betrayal. The vacation home, now tainted by the experience, was immediately put on the market. I never want to see that place again, she told me when I visited her in the hospital. Thomas knew exactly what he was doing, targeting a recently widowed businesswoman with that property. He knew the Blackwood history would appeal to me. A successful self-made woman reclaiming a piece of fallen family legacy. You couldn't have known, I assured her, though privately I wondered if more due diligence might have revealed Thomas's connection to the property. No, but I should have listened to Amanda when she first raised concerns about him, my mother admitted, a humility I'd rarely seen from her. And I should have told you both about the cognitive issues I've been experiencing. Pride can be a dangerous thing, Wendy. The revelation about her early-stage dementia had been confirmed by the hospital doctors. It wasn't advanced, but it had made her more vulnerable to Thomas's manipulation. We agreed that she would sell her main residence as well, and move into a smaller place near our home in Sacramento, where Jack and I could help monitor her condition. Amanda decided to take a leave of absence from her job in Seattle and stay with Mom during the transition. The ordeal had brought out a protective side of my sister I hadn't seen before. I'm not abandoning her again, Amanda said firmly when we discussed the arrangements. I knew something was wrong with Thomas from the beginning, but I let her convince me I was being paranoid. I won't make that mistake twice. A week after the events at the vacation home, Lily and I returned to Sacramento. Jack was due home in another week, and life was gradually returning to some version of normal. But I found myself paying much closer attention to my daughter's feelings and insights. The real test came one ordinary Tuesday afternoon. We were at the grocery store, when Lily suddenly froze in the produce section, her hand tightening around mine. Mommy, we need to leave right now, she whispered urgently. Without hesitation, I abandoned our half-filled cart and headed for the exit, Lily practically pulling me along. We had barely reached our car when a commotion erupted inside the store. Later, we learned that an armed robbery had taken place, with the perpetrator holding several shoppers hostage for nearly 3 hours. That evening, As Lily got ready for bed, I sat on the edge of her mattress and took her small hands in mine. "Sweetheart, I want you to know that I believe in your gift now," I told her seriously. "And I want to help you understand and use it. It's nothing to be afraid of or ashamed of." She nodded solemnly. "Daddy says it's a responsibility. That's why I have to tell people when I see bad things coming." "Your daddy is very wise," I agreed. "And when he gets home, we're going to have a family meeting about how we can support your gift properly." Lily's face brightened. "Does that mean I can tell you when I get feelings at school too?" "Miss Peters doesn't believe me. She says I have an overactive imagination." I felt a surge of protectiveness. "I'll speak with Miss Peters. And yes, you can always tell me about your feelings, anytime, anywhere." As I tucked her in and kissed her goodnight, Lily caught my hand. "Mommy, I'm glad you listened to me at Grandma's house." "So am I, sweetheart," I said fervently. "So am I." Later that night, I sat on our back porch, looking up at the stars and reflecting on how profoundly my understanding of the world had changed in just a few days. I had always prided myself on being logical, practical, firmly grounded in the physical world of what could be seen and proven. Now I had to acknowledge that there were other ways of knowing, other forms of perception that defied easy explanation. My phone buzzed with a text from Grace. Final count: 4 previous victims identified from Thomas's records. All survivors notified. Your mother's case has broken open a major fraud network. You should be very proud. I was proud, not of myself particularly, but of my family, of my mother, fighting through her fog of medication to help herself when the moment came, of Amanda, trying to protect everyone even when she was in danger herself, of Jack, who had recognized and supported our daughter's gift when I had been blind to it, and most of all, of Lily, who had been brave enough to trust her insights and persistent enough to make me listen. "Mom, don't go in there," she had said. And those 5 simple words had changed everything. My daughter had saved us all, and in the process, she had opened my eyes to a dimension of reality I had never fully acknowledged. It was humbling and awe-inspiring, all at once. As I prepared to go back inside, my phone rang. It was Jack, calling during his lunch break. "Hey," I said, smiling at the sound of his voice. "You'll never believe what happened while you were away." 3 months after what we now referred to simply as the incident, our family gathered for a small celebration in my mother's new condo, just 15 minutes from our house in Sacramento. The space was bright and modern, with wide windows overlooking a community garden, where she had already established herself as the unofficial landscaping consultant. Jack had returned from Germany and, impressed by how we had handled the crisis, had accepted a position with a local engineering firm, rather than continuing his international consulting work. "Some things are more important than career advancement," he'd said simply, when I expressed surprise at his decision. Amanda had extended her leave of absence into a permanent relocation, finding a job with a tech company in San Francisco and renting an apartment halfway between there and Sacramento. She visited every weekend, and the strain that had characterized her relationship with our mother for years had mellowed into something approaching friendship. My mother herself had undergone perhaps the most remarkable transformation. The diagnosis of early-stage dementia, far from destroying her, had inspired her to approach life with new intention and openness. She was following her treatment plan diligently, and her doctors were optimistic about maintaining her cognitive function for many years to come. "I never thought I'd say this," she remarked as we prepared dinner together, "but nearly losing everything was the wake-up call I needed. I've spent so much time chasing success and security that I forgot what really matters." I smiled, handing her the salad tongs. "Which is family, connections, being present for the people you love." She glanced toward the living room, where Lily was teaching Jack and Amanda a card game she had invented. "That remarkable granddaughter of mine, for instance. I intend to know her much better in these coming years." The legal aftermath of Thomas and Scott's scheme had been extensive. The trial was still months away, but with the overwhelming evidence we had gathered, their conviction was all but certain. More surprisingly, the investigation had uncovered 3 additional victims beyond the 4 initially identified, all wealthy retirees who had been systematically defrauded through similar methods. Grace kept us updated on the case's progress, stopping by occasionally for coffee and developing a friendly rapport with Lily, who was fascinated by her career. "She has the knowing too," Lily had whispered to me after Grace's first visit, but she calls it cop instinct. Perhaps the most significant change had been in my relationship with Lily. Following the incident, Jack and I had lengthy discussions about how to nurture her intuitive abilities without making her feel burdened by them. "My grandmother used to say that the knowing isn't always reliable," Jack explained. "It comes strongest when there's danger or important choices to be made. The rest of the time, it's just background noise. The trick is learning to distinguish between the two." We enrolled Lily in a program for gifted children that took a holistic approach to education, recognizing that intelligence manifests in many forms beyond the purely academic. There, she met other children with unusual perceptual abilities, from synesthesia to extraordinary pattern recognition. For the first time, she didn't feel like her insights made her weird or different. Her teacher, Miss Abigail Carter, had 20 years of experience working with exceptionally gifted children and approached Lily's abilities with matter-of-fact acceptance. "Intuition is just another form of intelligence," she told us during a parent conference. "Like any ability, it can be refined and developed with the right support." Under Miss Carter's guidance, Lily began keeping a journal of her feelings and impressions, noting which ones proved accurate and which might have been ordinary imagination. This simple practice helped her begin to distinguish between her genuine intuitive hits and regular childhood fancy. The vacation home had sold quickly, despite or perhaps because of its notoriety. My mother had used part of the proceeds to establish a trust for Lily's education, with the remainder going to a foundation supporting elderly victims of fraud. "Consider it my way of making amends for being so stubborn," she told me. "If I had been more open about my cognitive issues from the beginning, none of this might have happened. Or it could have been worse," I pointed out. "Thomas might have targeted you even more aggressively if he'd known about your diagnosis earlier." She conceded the point with a grace that would have been unimaginable in the proud, unbending woman she had been just months ago. As we gathered around the dining table that evening, I looked at the faces of my family with a profound sense of gratitude. We had come through a harrowing experience, but instead of breaking us, it had forged stronger bonds between us all. Jack raised his glass in a toast. "To new beginnings," he said simply. "And to trusting your instincts," I added, smiling at Lily, who beamed back at me. After dinner, while the others cleaned up, Lily tugged me out onto the small balcony. The summer evening was warm, the air scented with jasmine from the garden below. "I've been wanting to tell you something," she said, suddenly serious. "What is it, sweetie?" "I had a new feeling yesterday. A good one." I knelt down to her level, giving her my full attention. "Tell me about it." "I saw us all together, but there was someone new too." Her eyes sparkled with excitement. "A baby." My breath caught. Jack and I had been discussing having another child, but we hadn't told anyone yet. Not even Lily. "A baby brother," she continued confidently. "He'll have the knowing too, but different from mine. He'll know about things that already happened, and I know about things that are going to happen." I pulled her into a hug, overwhelmed by emotions I couldn't quite name. "That's a wonderful feeling to have," I managed to say. "Are you crying, Mommy?" "Happy tears," I assured her, wiping my eyes. "Sometimes feelings are so big they spill over." She nodded sagely. "Miss Carter says that's called emotional intelligence." I laughed, marveling at this remarkable child who had saved our family and continued to expand my understanding of the world every day. Later that night, as Jack and I drove home with a sleepy Lily in the back seat, I told him about her prediction. "A baby brother with past-oriented intuition," he mused, taking my hand across the console. "Well, that would certainly balance things out, wouldn't it? You and I living in the present, Lily sensing the future, and a little one connected to the past." "You don't seem surprised," I observed. He shrugged. "After everything that's happened, I'm not sure anything could surprise me anymore." He squeezed my hand. "Are you okay with her knowing before we've even started trying?" I thought about it for a moment. "You know, I am. 3 months ago, I would have been unsettled by it, but now, it feels right somehow. Like she's helping us glimpse the shape of our family's future." We pulled into our driveway, and Jack turned off the engine, turning to face me in the darkness. "I'm proud of you, Wendy. The way you handled everything while I was away, how you've embraced Lily's abilities, you're remarkable." "I just followed my daughter's lead," I said honestly. "She showed me what courage looks like." As we carried Lily inside and tucked her into bed, I reflected on the extraordinary journey that had begun with 5 simple words. "Mom, don't go in there." My daughter's warning had set in motion a chain of events that saved our family from disaster, brought criminals to justice, and opened my eyes to dimensions of experience I had never before acknowledged. In trusting her intuition that day, I had not only protected us from immediate danger, but had also embarked on a profound shift in my understanding of reality. I had always believed that knowledge came primarily through observation and logic, that the world was essentially what it appeared to be on the surface. Now I understood that there were deeper currents flowing beneath the visible world, connections and insights available to those attuned to them. As I kissed Lily's forehead and turned out her light, I silently thanked whatever universal forces had blessed her with her gift, and me with the wisdom to finally listen when it mattered most. The future stretched before us, no longer a blank slate but shimmering with possibilities, some of which my extraordinary daughter had already glimpsed. Whatever challenges it held, we would face them together, with new respect for the power of intuition and the strength that comes from trusting one another. Life would never be perfectly predictable or entirely safe, but with Lily's insights, Jack's steady support, and my newfound openness to unexpected forms of knowing, we were better equipped than ever to navigate its uncertainties. Sometimes, the most important wisdom comes from the most unexpected sources. In my case, it came from a 6-year-old child who knew, beyond all logic or explanation, that we shouldn't enter her grandmother's house that day. In listening to her, I had learned perhaps the most valuable lesson of my life, that love means trusting someone else's truth, even when it defies your own understanding of the world. And that, more than anything, was the gift I would carry forward from our ordeal, the knowledge that often, the deepest truths come in the simplest packages, if only we have the courage to listen. Have you ever had a moment when you ignored your intuition and regretted it? Or when you followed a gut feeling that turned out to be right? I'd love to hear your experiences in the comments below. Don't forget to like this video if it resonated with you, subscribe for more stories like this one, and share with someone who might need a reminder to trust their instincts. Thank you for listening to my story, and remember, sometimes the wisest voice in the room might be the quietest one.